everyone. I'm Angela, and I did graduate from UTA in 2002, which means I'm much older than all of you. And then my brother also graduated from UTA, and my father did many, many years ago when it was still called Arlington State College. So a long time ago, it used to be called Arlington State College. So I have a history with UTA, and so I'm really glad to be back here and to come and share with you a little bit about the people that we work with. We live in Southeast Asia. We live in southern Thailand. So think beautiful beaches, and yeah, that's where we live, but it's a very lost place. So we've been serving in Southeast Asia for 10 years. We started off in Burma, which is right next to Thailand, and we were there for 3 years. We studied the language, culture, and then they moved us to Thailand to work with Burmese people. So these are migrant people who are living in Thailand and are there as foreigners. And so we're working with Burmese Buddhists in southern Thailand. It's a very specific group. But we've been living around Buddhists for 10 years. And when Pudi asked me to come and share about understanding Buddhism, honestly, I was very nervous about this because those two words are really hard for me to put together, understanding Buddhism. I've been around Buddhists for 10 years. I've talked to many. I've asked them about what they believe. I've studied about it. And there's a lot of conflicting, like, confusing answers they give us, okay? So I went in and I was like, I want to give you a little history. I want to give you a little bit of some of the basic beliefs that they have, and also talk about some of the different branches of Buddhism, and then talk about also what we've been doing and our partners and other missionaries have been using working with Southeast Asian Buddhists, because they're actually a hard group to work with. There's been people church planting among Buddhists for a long, long time, but they haven't seen a whole lot of fruit, a lot of change of heart. Not a lot of them are coming to Christ. And so we've been trying everything we can think of to bridge that gap to be able to share the gospel. And so I'll tell you some of the things that we've found have been semi-successful and work with some people and then don't work with others. So I hope that God will use this to make you less afraid to engaging the Buddhists here. Okay? That's what I want. Don't be afraid of them. They're people. And before I left to go over to Burma, I read all these books about Buddhism, and then I got there and I'm like, this is not what I read about. It's different. It's different. And so I also want to talk about that. It's not what you always read or see. Okay? What they say and what they practice are different. So first off, I want to start with a video that was made by the organization we work for, which is International Mission Board, the IMB. And it's just a little intro into Buddhism. So let's start with that.
When most people think of Buddha, they think of an image like this. He's associated with happiness, good luck, and wealth, and is common to see in Chinese restaurants around the world. But this was not the original Buddha. This was. His real name was Siddhartha Gautama, and he became known as the founder of Buddhism. Essentially, the purpose of life for a Buddhist is to earn merit by doing what's right, like showing compassion, supporting the monks, and visiting Buddhist temples to show respect to the Buddha and his teachings. Today, around 250 million people practice Buddhism in over 60 countries. In Thailand, thousands of lanterns are released once a year in hopes of earning merit and good luck. In Nepal, people walk around a famous Buddhist temple counting prayer beads in hopes of earning merit. Buddhists hope that one day they will earn enough merit to escape the cycle of rebirth and achieve an eternal state of spiritual enlightenment.
So this is a picture of my family. So my husband Philip, my daughter Eden, and my son Ezra. And that's a picture of us in Thailand, about a couple of minutes from where we live, actually. So I want to kind of familiarize y'all with some of the key terms that you'll hear maybe when you talk to a Buddhist, so you won't be so confused. But one of the really important concepts to start off with is called samsara, and you may hear them pronounced different ways. I'm not like, I mean, these words are actually from an ancient language, Pali, but a lot of Hindus also know about samsara, and basically it is this picture of a wheel, okay, and that wheel is our existence, okay, and it's this wheel that we are, people or beings in general, are stuck in, this wheel of life, of death, of suffering, and we're all on this wheel, and it's not fun, okay? There's lots of suffering and death and just difficulty, okay? And the goal of a Buddhist is to escape it, because it's just meaningless, it's pointless. There's nothing to it. So that's what they believe. And so they want to get off this wheel, and they want to achieve either nirvana, which is just as being, to get off of the wheel is to go to nirvana, okay? Otherwise, you're just constantly in it. So you live your life, this life, and then you're reborn into, so whatever, you're reborn into another life, and it just keeps going on and on and on until you can escape out of it, okay? So I wanted to start off with a basic summary of who the Buddha was, like a little bit about his life. How many of you know a little bit about him? And the video showed some, but have y'all studied, you've probably heard his name, you see pictures of him, you've heard some about his life. What was his original name? They said it in the video, was Siddhartha Gautama, okay? So this man lived roughly during between the 6th and 4th I put 6th and 4th BC, okay? So he lived before Christ. One of the things that our Burmese Buddhists will say, well, our God was before your God. And so one of them, he lived before Jesus. I'm like, well, no, because Jesus was there at the creation. So he's actually was before Buddha. But he was a man. He lived in 6th to 4th BC. He was a son. He lived in what would be present-day Nepal, so northern India. He was the son of a wealthy ruler. And so the father of Siddhartha really wanted his son to become a wealthy ruler as well. So he wanted to know what was going to happen to his son. And so what he did was he invited all these Brahmin monks or priests to his house and said, please tell me what's going to happen to my son. And so these priests, they prophesied. There was 100 of them. So they came and prophesied. They said, well, either he's going to be the ruler of the world, or he's going to be this famous priest who achieves nirvana. So the father, sounds like he wasn't the greatest guy, but he's like, I want my son to be the ruler of the world. I don't want him to turn into this monk and not be, I want a kingdom. So one of the priests who came told him that if his young son, his son, saw an old man, a sick man, and a dead man and a monk, then after that, that's when he would turn to becoming a priest or a monk who would achieve enlightenment. So the father strived to make sure that his son didn't see those things. So he kept him inside the palace. He didn't want him to go outside. He didn't want him to see any of those things because he was afraid that he would become this monk and not be the ruler that he wanted to be. But when Siddhartha he was 29 years old, he started taking carriage rides out into the countryside, and he saw all of those things. And every time he saw each one of them, it really impacted him. And he had the question of, where does this suffering come from? Where does this old age come from? Where does death come from? Why is this monk, like, why is this man doing the, like, meditating? What is the purpose of life? Why is this happening? So that was his goal. And I think every Christian can relate to those questions, can we not? One of the greatest opportunities that we have to share with people is the question of, they'll say, why do we have to suffer? And well, let me share with you about sin. Because Buddha, he had a lot of good questions. I always say, Buddha was a great guy. He was really searching for answers in a very difficult world. I relate to them immediately. I think Buddha was a really good guy. He tried his best to figure out what was wrong with this world, and he made some really good observations, did he not? But the key difference is, he thought that he could find the answer to those problems within himself. He didn't realize that actually the reason why the whole problem is us, is the sin in us, and we can't separate that. So Buddha left. He shaved his head. He left his wife and son. He abandoned them basically, and he went out to search for the truth for 6 years. So the first thing he did is he went to the Brahmins, the priests, and he did everything the Brahmin teachers told him to do to achieve enlightenment, and it didn't work. He mastered all of them, all the yoga poses, everything, but it didn't work. He didn't achieve it. So he said, well, this is not the right way then. Well, there was a bunch of ascetics at that point, wandering the countryside, so he joined them. And so he didn't eat. He just grew skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. Eventually, he fainted and realized this is not the way either. This is not working. So he tried both extremes. And finally, he sat under the tree, the Bodhi tree, or a banyan tree. He sat there, and he sat there, and that's when he started to, or when he achieved enlightenment or understood, had a series of like visions and experiences that led him to his teaching, okay? So the first part of his first level was he learned about samsara, which we've already talked about, like we're all in this wheel. Okay, the second level was he learned about dharma, which basically means teaching. He understood what needs to be taught, what's the problem. And then he learned about the effects of karma, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So after he achieved enlightenment, he's still living, he's still on this earth. He didn't immediately go up to nirvana. And so after that, he went back, he started teaching. He had a big following of disciples. And he lived until he was 80 years old, and then he died from food poisoning, which I always make a joke about being in Southeast Asia and dying of food poisoning. But he died of food poisoning. And of course, he knew he was going to die. He knew that the food the man gave him was going to kill him, but because he's so compassionate, he ate it anyway, even though he knew he was going to die. So that is the basic life history of this man, okay? Now, there's a lot of different stories related to him that come from different scriptures. There's a Buddhist scriptures, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about variations, but this is the main one that all of them agree to. And we're going to talk about his teaching. These are the 4 noble truths that he came to understand when he was sitting under the tree. The first truth is, life is full of suffering. Number 2, suffering is caused by desire. And the word desire is really, I think, doesn't encompass what they mean. I think suffering is caused by our cravings, our desire for things. It's really just all of that bad stuff in our heart. We would call it sin, but they call it a desire for other things, desire for even our feelings. Our feelings are part of that. One of the hardest things when Buddhists become Christians is to teach the new believers that your feelings are not sinful. Your feelings are given from God. So that's one of the struggles they come with. They think that all those feelings inside of them are just desires and cravings. So suffering is caused by desire. Suffering will only cease. This wheel will only cease when desire ceases. So the only way to get off this wheel permanently is you got to stop all of those things in your head and your actions that are selfish and command us. As believers, we know that's impossible. That sin nature is innate. We can't get rid of it, but that's what they want to do. That's what they want to make stop. And the only way you can do these things, the only way you can make those desires and cravings stop is by following the Eightfold Path that Buddha discovered. So the Eightfold Path is as follows. Once again, it's another wheel. In Southeast Asia, in Buddhism, there's a lot of cyclic thinking. Even when they tell a story, it's like a cycle, like a wheel. So these are the Eightfold Path that if you follow them, these things, all of them, well, you can achieve nirvana. You can get rid of the desire or the cravings in all part of your life. So you need to know the right view. You need to know the truth. You need to have the right intention. You need to free your mind of evil. Right speech, you say nothing that hurts others. Right action, work for the good of others. Right livelihood, respect life. Right effort, you resist evil. Right concentration, you practice meditation. And right mindfulness, you control your thoughts. So these are the ways that you achieve nirvana. Now, do y'all think that y'all can achieve this all the time, every minute of the day? And not only that, remember, you're in this cycle and you have previous lives and you have previous bad actions or bad merit that you had from your other life, bad karma from previous life. So you're paying for that stuff now, but it's like lives that I think in American, when we talk about Buddhism and karma, we're thinking good things, But they're thinking, I have to pay not only for now, but I have to pay for all the lives before me if I'm ever going to get out of this cycle. And it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So if I ask a Burmese Buddhist today, I was like, so do you think you're going to get out of the cycle? Are you going to achieve enlightenment? And they would just laugh. You're joking, right? No one goes to nirvana. Maybe a really good monk, but the average person, no. And most average monks, no. We're just hoping to get to a higher level of hell. That's their goal. A higher level of hell when they leave this life. So it's a very hopeless, okay? Okay, so here's some of the words I've already kind of gone over, but we can look at a few. So karma, I have a picture of karma, okay, but here, the actions or deeds of a person that help determine their position in the next life. So whatever you've done, your actions and deeds determine your karma, whether good karma or bad karma. Merit comes from karma, okay? You either have good merit or bad merit. Enlightenment, a transcendent awakening to ultimate truth and suspension of all earthly desires. So Buddha achieved that when he sat under the tree. Dharma, Buddha's original teachings encompass in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Nirvana, an eternal state of nothingness and the permanent release from the cycle of rebirth, obtained through achieving enlightenment. And last is the rebirth, a person's new existence after death determined by their karma in their previous life. So here's kind of, I always get confused between merit and karma. But karma is really what you're thinking, okay, the fruit of the desires in your heart. Whether your desire is for the good of others, and that would bring about good karma. Or if you feed the monks, that brings about good, you're doing something as a sacrifice for someone else, that brings about good karma. That good karma will lead to good merit. And I brought my little market scale from Burma. They weigh things on these still. But it really is a picture of what they believe about merit. Everyone's trying to make merit. And so some of the ways that they make merit is by giving to the monks. So they're doing good things, right? To get enough of this merit, these good deeds, to outweigh the bad. So they really see it as a scale. How much good merit did you do in this life? If it does it overcome the bad merit? Okay, is it enough to get you to a higher, when you're rebirthed, higher existence? Okay, so if you can always remember, merit is like this. They really are trying their best to do enough to make up for their mistakes. Because based on their merit, you get that back. Whatever you did good merit, then either in this lifetime or the next lifetime, you're going to get that back somehow. So it's all, you don't do something, one of the things that, concepts that's really foreign, is to do something good for someone just because, and not expect anything in return. Because you're doing good to get a good reward. Does that make sense? You're not doing it just because you love the person. You're doing it to get something out of it. So if a Southeast Asian person gives you a gift, you really need to give them a gift back to be equal. You want to, they're doing good to you, you need to give good to back. Okay? So there's not just a free gift. You always have to, it's like a give and take. Okay? So this is very important to a Buddhist. Okay, some things to think about. As I've been over there working with Buddhists, we're going to talk about some different branches of Buddhism, but these are just some kind of main takeaways. Buddha did not claim to be a god, but in the stories of him, he interacted with gods, mainly Hindu gods. So he said, he's not a god, don't worship me, I'm not a god. But then he had interactions with other beings and other gods. So it came, it really came from Hinduism, so they really have a lot of, kind of like cousins in a lot of ways. So, and all the Buddhist scriptures, the ancient scriptures about Buddhism that are wrote down about Buddha, it includes him interacting with various Hindu gods, okay? He did not believe in any kind of soul. There is no fixed point of creation by a god. Everything has been and always will be. His way is only one way to achieve nirvana. There can be other ways, according to Buddha. Heaven and hell are not eternal places, but beings can rebirth out of them. So the concept of hell being eternal and heaven being eternal is something that we have to teach. It's not something, they think that you're constantly, you can, if you're in hell, you go to a lower place of hell to pay for your bad karma and your bad merit. Well, eventually you'll be birthed out of that into another one. So you're constantly, these are not eternal places. So there's three main branches of Buddhism. I'm going to go through these quickly so we can get to some of the ways to do EV. There's Theravada Buddhism. This branch is prominent in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. It's about 38% of Buddhists. This is considered the oldest and most conservative branch of Buddhism. They adhere strictly to the Pali Canon, which is the earliest written text of Buddhist teaching. And those texts were written down 500 years after he walked the earth. So it's kind of but they believe that they were kept up through the monks through oral tradition right after he died, and then eventually they're written down 500 years later. Like I've already said, Theravada Buddhism, they believe Buddha was a man, not a god. But then if this is the branch in Burma, if I sit down and talk to a Burmese Buddhist, they would say he's a god. So I get way confused about what they believe, because they say that according to this, the research I did, they say they don't believe he is a god, but when I talk to people, they say he is a god. So rigorous self-effort is required to achieve nirvana. So just like I said, the average person will not achieve nirvana. They will not make it even into one of the planes of heaven. They'll be in lower. They're just going for a higher plane of hell is their goal usually for this lifetime. Okay, the next branch, I put these out of order, is the Vajrayana Buddhism. This is the smaller of the three, and it's basically Tibetan Buddhism. Only 6%. It's an offshoot of the next one we're going to look at, of Mahayana, with a special emphasis on the magical and the occult. So if you've ever been to a Tibetan temple, there's some really disturbing images of demons in Tibetan temples. They add some sacred texts from Hinduism that supposedly have secret ways to achieve nirvana by special hand positions, by yoga positions, and by chanting certain mantras or mantras. So this is a smaller group, but actually you hear a lot about Tibetan Buddhism. And then, have you seen the mandala? It's a circular diagram describing cosmic spaces and spiritual relationships. They can draw like this picture, circular picture, and they have deep meditation with the mandala, which leads to out-of-body experiences. So this is like I haven't had a lot of experience with Tibetan Buddhists, but this was the differences between this and the other two that I researched. The largest group is the Mahayana, and this is mainly seen in China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. But remember, China was taken over by the communists and is an atheist country. So a lot of that has been kind of wiped out. But in a lot of the places that Chinese people now live in Southeast Asia and other parts of East Asia, you still see of them still practicing Mahayana. It's the most liberal and largest branch of Buddhism. They don't use the core Pali scriptures. They've added to it. They believe Buddha is a transcendent being. He's lived in multiple universes and multiple Buddhas. So there's he's had all these other lives. And so they've added to the history of him doing all these other activities before he lived here. Path of enlightenment is open to everyone. And then they have these figures called bodhisattvas, who are people who've achieved enlightenment, but they have delayed their going to nirvana because they want to show compassion to people. What that means is they've set up big old idols of these people or figures, and people go make offerings to them and hope that they'll be compassionate and help them achieve enlightenment. So that is a very quick version of Buddhism in the shell. 3 branches, and they're a little bit different, but the main core teachings of the Buddha, of who he was, the Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, are central to all 3 of them. Now I have this very strange picture up. These are not pictures or idols of Buddha. These are, I wanted to talk like 2 minutes about what I was saying earlier, that when I read all the books, I learned everything about Buddha, I went to Southeast Asia, and then they have stuff like this. I'm like, what does it have to do with Buddha? Who are these people? Why are they making major offerings to them? So, and the Burmese people would say, well, we believe in Buddhism for when we die, but for now on this earth, we make offerings to spirits, because spirits have more power than Buddha is for when we die. The spirits are for right now. Does that make sense? So for a Buddhist, it's all about making merit for these other lifetimes and stuff that has no power for their current life. The problem is, I don't have any money. I don't know what to do. My husband's run off. But if I pray to some of these spirits and give them money and offerings, things happen. So they have found, they've mixed in animism, which is the worship, or spirit worship. And our part, like Thailand, Burma, they really add in a lot, even in the Islam of Indonesia, it's called folk Islam, folk Buddhism. They add in animistic elements, spirit worship. They live in fear of spirits. These are evil spirits. They're not, but if we can, they have power, and if I give them enough money, enough things, then they're going to help me. If I bribe them enough, they're going to help me. So when you work with a Buddhist, when you meet people here, you really, ask them where they're from, and then ask them about what do you worship? What do you believe? What's important to you? Okay? Because I would say every Buddhist is a little different. What they do, what they follow, what's really important to them, what they worship every day is different. So you would go into a Burmese person's house or a Thai person's house. They have their God shelf. They have their statue of Buddha. Then they have statues of either, these are called nats, so of their nat that they offer to, or maybe ancestors in Vietnam, Cambodia, and other places in Southeast Asia. They worship their ancestors. Once again, they're spirits. So they can help them or hurt them, and they don't want to offend them because they'll cause problems for them. So it's blended together, Buddhism and animism. And it's really, you very rarely find them separate. Yeah. In my encounters with people, majority of it's like this. They're connected. They really can't tell the difference, an average person there. But there are some people, I would say the more highly educated people, who are very pure in their Buddhism. They don't mix it with animism. A lot of the monks are trying to encourage people to get rid of their spirit worship and just be pure Buddhist. So I don't know what type of person you encounter here at UTA. I'm sure there are various ones. I was going to tell a story about that, actually. We just arrived to Burma. It had been about 6 months since we arrived, and I was walking down the street, and there's an old lady, and she invited us in. It was the first person to invite us into their house, and I asked her what she did. She was a grandma. I was like, what do you do? And she said, she was like, I do this. And I'm like, what does that mean, you dance? And she's like, yes. And so then she took me upstairs, and the whole room was full of life-sized, of the picture I just have, of those gnats, life-size idols, 37 of them. Like, it's a small house. It was like the whole room. And I was like, okay, this is getting strange. You dance and you have very large idols in your house. What exactly? I don't see the combination. Like, what does this have to do with anything? And she's like, I'm a gnat dancer. So they get possessed by the evil spirits while they're dancing. And then they can offer blessings. They can also communicate with dead people. And so that's her job. She's a spirit medium. So it was our first person that we got invited into was a spirit medium. And so over several months of conversations, I finally asked her, I was like, so how did you start this work? Like, well, you just woke up one day and wanted to be a spirit medium? Like, how does that work? You know? And she's like, oh no, I was at the pagoda, and I was making offerings to Buddha. I was meditating, and the spirits came, and they talked to me, and they spoke to me, and they said that they would give me money, privilege, power in my community if I would give them permission to come and live inside of me. And so, of course, I want those things, and so that's what I've done. And it's been true. She was the wealthiest person in that community. And so you can I think you can see how Satan he came to her while she was meditating, okay? And he comes and speaks to people during that time where they're devoting themselves to the worship of idols and uses that as we see a lot of demon possession after they've been meditating for long periods of time. Okay, so there's a big connection between the two. Okay, quickly, I want to talk about 3 evangelism tools that we've used in Southeast Asia, very quickly, since it's 12:45. One's called Any3. It's called Anywhere, Anyone, Anywhere, Anytime. At the end of this, I can show you a website if you want to go. This is actually the name of a book, Any3. And it was developed by a missionary I think he's in Indonesia. So it was developed for Muslims, okay? But we've been using it for Buddhists, and we changed some of the terminology. Instead of using the word, it talks about sins. Either we define what sin is, or we use the word bad merit. Okay, so we use the word bad merit there. So in this conversation, it's just basically asking questions. It says you get acquainted, you get to whether, are you a Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, or Christian? Okay. And then one of the things that, when I heard this evangelism tool, it always bothered me, but it's been really good. It's been a good way to talk to people is we say, most religions are alike, aren't they? Because as Christians, we're like, no, that's not right. But there are a lot of similarities, In most religions, people are trying to do good things to please whatever God. So in your religion, what are you doing to please your God or to get rid of your bad merit? What do you do to get rid of your bad merit? And a Buddhist would say, I go to the pagoda, I make offerings, I meditate. Well, so how's that going for you? Do you feel like you got enough good merit to be reborn into a new, a better place? And they would say, oh, no, I haven't done it good. I don't know. A lot of it is I hear, I don't know. Well, when will you know? If you died today, I say that a lot, if you died today, do you think you would have done enough good merit to make it to a higher place? And most of them would say, no, I have not. Well, what I believe is different. I believe that my bad merit has been forgiven. Instead of forgiven, we say taken away, or we do an illustration where when we talk about Jesus had all this good merit because he is perfect. He never had any bad merit. He never had one bad thought. See, he's got all this good merit. And what he did was he took your bad merit on him, and he transferred all of that good merit to you. So that you don't have, there's no way that you can get enough good merit. And so I know for certain that I have enough good merit to be at peace with God, and I can go on to live with him forever. And I don't have to be continually reborn. So this is one way that we've been using to talk about that. And it makes a lot of sense. We usually use an object. It's like Jesus took yours away, take the object off, or he took the bad merit and put it on him, and he gave his good merit to you. So it's like that idea of taking your burden and putting on Jesus. Another one that is just recently, a lot of people have been doing in Southeast Asia is called 4 visits. It's very similar, but it's the idea that you really need, especially Southeast Asian people, have high value on relationship, and you need to spend a lot of time with them. So 4 visits is you start off, you visit with them, you share that you're a Christian, but you don't share the gospel the first time. Second visit is you ask them lots of questions about them. You try to figure out what's most important to them. If they're Buddhist, if they're animist, what's going on in their life. So the second time, you pray for them. One of the most powerful things that we've experienced is when we pray for Buddhists. What problem are you having? Our God is a living God. He fixed my problems. He can fix yours too. And so we pray for them, or they join us in prayer, and then God answers their prayer. He speaks to them. They've never had a personal God who speaks to them. So that's transformational for them. The third visit, you come back and tell a story that relates to whatever problem they have in their life or whatever focus they have. And in the fourth visit, it would be to share the full gospel. So on the front end, you're doing a lot of really trying to relate to them and hear their worldview and where they're at. And this has had a lot of success recently in Burma. So, okay, are y'all familiar with Creation to Christ? Have heard of it maybe? We use this a lot. We had this printed out for y'all. There's several different ways to do it, but this is a picture. I just carry this card around in my pocket, and we use it to share with people. Some of the really things that they're really interested in, especially since most Buddhists are also animists, is the creation of the spirits and what spirits are and who they serve. So we usually start there. Okay, we talk about the spirit world first. Okay, there is an app, if you go to the App Store, called C2C, which is Creation of Christ. And this is a picture. It just has the pictures, and then actually on the icons, it'll play whatever the story for each picture is. So if you're going out to do evangelism with someone, you can just use the pictures, or you could let the thing play for yourself. But we've had a lot of success with the Creation of Christ. I have a bunch of these pictures. Let me get to them. Where is it? So they're cool pictures that you can use. There's a bunch of them. And they always end with the prodigal son. And that Jesus, he brings us back to God just in the same way in the story. So bridges for Buddha, some things that we found are very great opportunities, or they are very interested in. The first one is creation. All the Buddhists I've talked to love the story of creation, because in their version, what they've been taught is that there's never been an actual point of creation. It's just always has been. So they're fascinated about a creator God who creates the world, that there's a beginning to everything. And they're really interested in, another really big thing is the fall of man. Where did suffering come from? I have the answer for you. I can tell you where it came from. We can pinpoint in the Bible where that came from, where suffering, death, all of that came from. And it came from sin. And this sin is in us, and we can't get rid of it. No matter how much meditation you do, it will not leave us. Only Jesus had to come and take it for us. Okay? So sin, suffering, where did it come from? Why do we always choose to do the wrong thing? It's been a great opportunity. They're very interested in that and willing to hear. When I told the creation story to a lady recently, right before we came back, the thing that she was really, after what was interesting to her, she's a Buddhist, she said that we are made in the image of God and that he loves us. Like, just the idea of a loving God who created us, and that he created us and we're created by him, and he created us exactly the way he wanted us. These are things that they don't have. Number 3, I already shared. Jesus gave us his good merit, and he took all our bad merit on him. 4, Jesus made a way to have peace eternally and to conquer our desires. We talk a lot about peace. Peace in our mind, peace in our heart, peace with God. Peace is an important thing for Buddhists. And that Jesus is a personal God who loves you. A God who created them, who is personal to them, who loves them and wants to have a relationship with them is very foreign, but very good news. Because I think every one of us have that desire to have, that God's put it in our heart to know a personal God, a living God. Okay, here are the resources I use. Y'all can write those down. The NE3 is the one I was talking about. We were doing NE3, and I was just trying it out one day, and we went out to walk around, my friend and I, in Burma. We were walking the streets, and there was this really elderly Burmese man, and he had his little Buddhist scriptures open, and he was reciting them, sitting there. I mean, he was really old. So we were like, he'll listen because he's old and didn't have anything else to do. So we sat down with him, and we're like, what are you doing there? And so we started going through the NE3 with him, and we're like, well, do you think you've done enough good things? I mean, you're elderly in your life. Do you think that you've done enough good to outweigh your bad? He's like, I'm not sure. And we're like, he's like, I'm not really sure. You know, that's why I'm studying the scriptures now. When you're young, you do what you want. But when you're old, you get down to religion because you know it's getting close to the end. So you want to be serious about it. When you're young, you do play, you want to do what you want. And so we're like, well, you know, we know. We're certain that our bad merit, we have enough good merit because a holy God gave us his merit. And he's like, oh, that's really different. I've never heard about that. Like, tell me more about that. I've never heard. I've lived all these years and never heard that there's a living God who gives us his merit. He didn't become a believer, but it was just his honesty. Like, I've never heard about that. And that's really amazing that you can be sure, because we're not sure. Up until the day we die, we're not sure if we've done enough good things, okay? So I will open it up. Do y'all have any questions? Y'all can ask any questions. There's a lot of stuff I didn't touch on. So any burning questions in your heart? Yes?
So like, you talked about there are 4 different branches, there are 3 different branches on that of Buddhism, and I was just wondering, so kind of like how with like Christianity, there's like, maybe like different like, I guess like denominations within like Protestantism or whatever, and so like, depending on even like where you live or whatever, you might see like a bunch more like Baptist churches where you go, or maybe like Methodist churches.
Yeah.
Is there like for example, if you just go to like Sweden or whatever, where would you find like different like forms of the Mahayana?
Yes, you might, because it would be it'd be very similar, but you would, one of the things is there's lots of monks, and every monk has kind of his own following, and that monk's teaching is added on upon their other base Mahayana or whatever. So it's also, if this person goes to this pagoda and sits under this monk, then he's going to maybe have some different views than the other pagoda. But all very similar, I think. Is that your question? Yeah, maybe. And also, I would even, like, as far as the differences between 3 branches, I would even be even more further apart and say, be similar to, like, maybe Mormonism versus, like, Baptist, because the Mahayana and the Theravada are vastly different, honestly, because they use a completely different, they add on to the original Pali Canon, which is what the Theravada attest to or believe in. The Mahayana adds on a lot of different other scriptures and interprets it differently. So I would make it even further apart. Yeah.
How often do you come across Buddhists who, when they hear about
I think every time, I would say 80% of the time, 80, 90% of the time that we share that, they're very, very interested in that. The very small percentage of them are angry or don't want to hear it. Most of them think that's amazing news, but most of them don't become believers. And I think Pootie and I were talking about this. There's a deep sense of, this is what my mom and dad believe, and I have to believe that too. So even if they really want to believe, their community at large and their family ties make it difficult for them to make that choice. And most of them find that is amazing, because this is a huge burden. The weight of not only this lifetime's sin debt, but all the previous sin debts are on you, and there's no way for you to get out of that. One of our missionaries, he was in a heated discussion with someone, like a really staunch Buddhist, and he's like, if y'all are such good Buddhists, because y'all are the most conservative Buddhists in all the world, why is Burma one of the poorest countries in the world? Because that means that all of y'all must have had really bad previous lives. But if you think of it that way, their mindset is like, we're poor. That means everything that we've done from our previous lives, we must have been bad people. So that's a heavy debt to pay for. But most of them are amazed by it, but reluctant to turn to Christ because of the connection with their families and community. I've had people say, well, I want to go to I want to continue to you can make merit for people who've died. So I want to continue to make merit for my dad, so I can only do that if I'm a Buddhist. So if I don't do that for him, he's dead, then he's going to go to a lower place. So I have that burden to help him. So, any other questions? Yes.
What you were saying earlier about the gift of like the other gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
As Christians, that's something that like we should return to give.
I think it's good, but when I give a gift, I always say, like, I give this out of the love that Jesus put in my heart for you, and just leave it at that. He gives us a free gift, and so I want to give you a free gift. You don't have to return it. It's free. But yeah, I emphasize it's because of, I know Jesus' love, and I want to share it with you. Any other thoughts? Yes. Yes. They're nuns, is what they're called, Buddhist nuns. There's tons of them. In Buddhism, I didn't get into that. As far as the way it's practiced, women are considered lower and have to be under the direction of male monks. But they're not treated as equals at all. And in Burma and Thailand, some pagodas, women are not allowed to go to certain areas. They say that women will, they tarnish or pollute holy sites. So as women as being kind of a lesser or more unholy person. So there is I think in America, the Buddhism in America and in a lot of places, people are trying to push back against that. It's very much practiced and believed in Southeast Asia that women are lesser and the boys are more treasured or desired, because boys will earn more merit for their parents than a girl can. So their parents really want a boy, because a boy can make more merit for after they pass away. When I was pregnant with my daughter in Thailand, I would get a lot, oh, it's okay, next time you'll be lucky and have a boy. So we used to get that a lot. Our oldest is a girl. So, any other questions? So, anyway, thanks for listening. I'll leave you this last thought is that every Buddhist is very, they're different. So get to know them first. See what they believe, what they focus on, because every person's a little different. And don't get so much caught up in arguing about Buddhism and Christianity, but really focus on who Jesus is and what he can do for them. We found that when we engage them in like an intellectual Buddhist versus Christianity, we a lot of times teach them more about Buddhism than they already knew, and most nominal Buddhists. And so it's really, I think it's been much more effective to get to the gospel and to get to who Jesus is and how he changed your life. So, thank you.